Today on a special Locked On MLB crossover, Mike Trout makes history and the Colorado Rockies, well, they avoid history. We'll talk about all that and more on a special crossover episode of Locked On Rockies and Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On MLB crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans and Angels fans, welcome into a special Locked On MLB crossover edition of the Locked On Rockies and Locked On Angels podcast. I am one of your hosts today, Paul Holden, joined for, I believe, the first time we've ever done a pod. John's gotten to see videos of me reacting to all the wonderful Rockies baseball throughout the year, as he's one of the great hosts on Locked On MLB Game Night, which you should be making your second listen every night.
Indeed.
Coverage from every game every night, and he's one half of the Super Halo Bros over there on the Locked On Angels podcast. John, how's it going?
Oh man, what a weekend, huh?
A rarity where the Rockies get to be the ones coming out on top, but we're going to dive into that and more. Of course, we get to talk about a very special moment, and we're going to kick the show off with that. Mike Trout hitting his 400th home run, and of course, for the Rockies fans out there, we've been talking about the quest for 42. And the Rockies actually end up getting 2 wins and end up at 43. So officially not going to finish as the worst record of all time or the worst National League record of all time. They will hold on to the worst run differential at all time, minus 406 as of recording today.
I didn't even realize that. I hadn't even looked at the run differential. You know, you're watching the win-losses and all of that. But, yeah, run differential. You know what, Angels they probably have like 398, so it's okay.
The Angels, according to teamrankings.com, are 28th in baseball at minus 146.
Yep.
So nice, cool 364, or no, 54 worse or ahead of the Rockies there. But before we go any further, got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Go to 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. And of course, Rockies do take the series. They avoid that. But let's talk about the bigger moment in baseball here. Let's talk about one of the most, for us, it's got to be the biggest name in baseball, probably for that I can really think of up until his former teammate Shohei Ohtani came into the league. Of course, names there, the storyline's there. But what a milestone. And then, oh my God, he hit the hell out of that ball.
He definitely did. Yeah. Mike Trout hitting his 400th home run. He was sitting on 398 and 399 for a very long time. And then so awesome to see him hit that mammoth home run. And he came close a couple of times before that.
Yep.
But I have to say, too, that, I saw Pujols hit, I want to say 500 and 600 as an Angel. Unfortunately, they were both on the road and they were both in DC. So they didn't happen at home. This one didn't happen for Trout at home, but shout out to Rockies fans for being just so respectful and understanding the moment. And man, the videos that came out afterward with the guy playing catch with Trout and for everybody asking, where's Trout's glove? What the heck? They had cleared out the dugout. So Trout was like, does anybody have a glove? I need a glove. But I thought that was so cool. Cool of the fan and the family to give him back that ball and to ask to play catch. What a baseball fan, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can't get much. I mean, it's hey, I kind of look at those moments in 2 ways. If you're the person that says, hey, this is my lottery ticket and I'm going to cash out for the most I can't really blame you there. Yeah. But what an experience, what a moment that you can say that I think for a lot of people is priceless. And for Mike Trout, it's a huge milestone of a career that, again, we don't need to, highlight the unfortunate kind of bumpy nature of it. A guy that hits, 400 home runs is not something to scoff at. We see a lot of people hit bombs, and for him, and I know the season hasn't gone that way, but it's got to be nice to get that milestone as to figure out what's kind of next for him and really the team.
Yeah, it felt like no pun intended, a monkey on his back there for a while. But you know this as well as I do, Paul. Like, you can't fight your body. You can't fight what, he's really fighting against the injuries, and he has been for about 5 years now, right? And so he had that torn meniscus last year. He kind of re-injured it running the bases this year. Didn't have to get surgery or anything, but he was out for the month of May. And he just hasn't been the same at the plate. His timing's a little bit off. He's kind of moving his head and things like that. So if Rockies fans are watching this weekend going, what's his average doing in the 220s? It's just been that kind of season for Trout. And, while he's got 20 some odd home runs this year, he's walking a ton, right? But I think it's kind of indicative of just like where the team has been this season. And without Trout, kind of leading the way, there's some young guys that we're excited about. Zach Neto, Nolan Shonawell, Joe Adell, of course, Logan O'Hoppe. But without Trout leading the way there and just kind of setting the standard for what this team ought to be or what he can typically do in a season. Father Time is undefeated and he's been battling those injuries for a while. I'm hoping, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later on. Again, the monkey is off his back and that it's out of his system and that we can move forward into next season and he can be a fully healthy Trout at some point.
Yeah, and of course, not only hitting that also that win snapping a really long losing streak. Rockies fans are no strangers. The Rockies have had multiple 8-game losing streaks just this season alone. Yeah. The Rockies, of course, have been on this. They just got swept by the Marlins before. It was a something's got to give type of series for both of these teams going into it. And it wasn't necessarily too crazy cores. The Rockies got what they've been desperately needing throughout most of the season. They got a good Kyle Freeland, and it's just a classic case that we've seen from him. Moments where he can do what he did in the finale against the Angels, give you 6 strong innings there. Not perfect, going to give up some damage there, but
sure.
But he's also had some moments where just gets rocked immediately and just hasn't done that. The Rockies pitching staff, of course, we were talking the run differential there, early on. So there's some struggles there. Just your general thoughts about a 1-9 road trip for the Angels here.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned before, it's indicative of a lot that's wrong with this season so far. I don't know if you know, or maybe your fans didn't know, Ron Washington, of course, came on as the Angels manager last year. Kind of a starting from scratch moment, kind of whipping these young guys into shape and getting them, baseball ready in terms of, their mindset and their defense on the field. And then he took a leave of absence about halfway through this season, had quadruple bypass surgery. And my contention is that he just wasn't able to be 100% Ron Washington, even for the first half of the season. And so they go to the interim manager, Ray Montgomery, bench coach the last couple of years, just not inspiring. It doesn't really inspire confidence in the team. Not somebody that I think this team is excited to follow. In fact, Yusei Kikuchi kind of had some critical things to say, not directly about him before this Rockies series, about getting pulled when he got pulled. And so, yeah, it was just like it felt like Yusei was trying to say, this isn't the guy. And so I'm hoping that the Angels can find somebody moving forward. There's still questions if Ron Washington can come back. In my opinion, I'd love to see somebody new. I'd love to see somebody younger. I'd love to see Tori Hunter maybe take that mantle. I know there's talk about Albert Pujols, but yeah, the 1-9 road trip, I think, is just a symptom of not really any leadership and not really any great management, especially since Ron Washington has took ill.
And the Rockies in a kind of mirror type situation here also move on from there. Not obviously the Ron Washington was a move on. They had to make an adjustment at manager there. The Rockies move on from Bud Black after a historically bad start. As we start here, the Rockies avoid the worst record of all time. That does not avoid all the other bad history that they have made throughout the rest of this season. The Rockies 2025 season will go down as one of the worst seasons, not only in Rockies history, but baseball history. But the Rockies move on from Bud Black. Kind of a move again, bringing Bud Black. It was just status quo for Rockies. It was just bring back him, and it started exactly kind of how you expected. So the Rockies move on with Warren Schaefer, and they see some success. And the Rockies players speak very highly of Warren Schaefer. You can, when you're talking about a guy that is not unified or got out, getting stuff out of his players, it is clear that the Rockies players are engaged, locked in, and believe in Warren Schaefer here enough for, I think, in typical Rockies faction. If you got the interim tag, that's just going to probably get removed because their last GM, their last their last manager. That's usually how it's how I feel like it's going to be. Actually, Bud Black was brought on, but I just don't see any reason why the Rockies wouldn't do what they do, which is promote and hire from within. Do what they, even in the midst of this, people say, we'll have to dive into more, but I can't sit here and say I anticipate massive change coming to the Rockies, even in the midst of 7 straight losing seasons, 3 straight 100-loss seasons. But I will give credit, as you guys mentioned, struggling with the interim manager, the Rockies did seem to really rally around their interim manager here in this season. And their performance at home really shows that they have been a better team at home in the second half of the season, as the Angels just saw. The Rockies, have gotten some solid performances there. But I kind of want to dive into and ask the question, just, kind of what's next, or just what's been on the mind of Angels fans, because, I've unfortunately been a bit of a downer. The Rockies just had a horrible stretch against the NL West before this homestand. They're now going on the road to Seattle and San Francisco in 2 series where I don't anticipate a whole lot of success, because we're talking about 2 really tough matchups for the team.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going into, I want to get ahead on the postseason on what Angels fans are thinking, what Rockies fans are thinking, and what's next for these 2 teams. We're going to do that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies and Locked On Angels for a special Locked On MLB crossover. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Zipix. This episode is brought to you by Zipix Toothpicks. Whether you're looking for nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zipix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine-infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, Zipix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zipix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. Available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. Go to zipixtoothpicks.com. Use the code LOCKEDON for 10% off. That's code LOCKEDON at zipixtoothpicks.com for 10% off your first order. You must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's zipixtoothpicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Zip more, smoke less with Zipix Toothpicks. We're also brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. You're going to get this portable, super easy, super tasty, tiny shot you can take anywhere and get the boost when you need it. I like when you're on the road driving late, if you've got to have on a road trip or something like that, and you don't want to slam a big old sugary drink or a big old sugary energy drink. Down the hatch, little 5-Hour Energy, and it's going to kick in fast, and it's sugar-free, so you don't have to worry about the crash later. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the flavors, or the favorites you love. Be bold and try something new in-store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Locked On MLB crossover here. Locked On Rockies, Locked On Angels. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Make sure you're checking us both out on YouTube as well. One of the best places to support our shows is the Locked On Rockies and Locked On Angels YouTube channel. John, before we dive into the more philosophical big picture stuff, I just wanted to kind of figure out a little bit more of, let's just kind of finish up some stuff that stood out to us in this series. Blaine Crim, the Rockies, young guy. This guy's coming out here and just starting out here, swinging the bat, having a nice. I love when the one things that does make it a little bit easier here for the Rockies sometimes is when you get some cool stories out there, like Blaine Crim, who's now hit another homer for the Colorado Rockies. Anything else stick out to you from the series from the Angels side? Of course, we talked about Trout. Anything else you saw from the Angels, or maybe just see some names on the Rockies you're like, hey, that might be kind of fun to watch?
Well, as a host of MLB Game Night, I've got to hear you talk about Hunter Goodman, and I was late to the Goodman party in terms of fantasy baseball, but that's okay. Still won my league. That's okay.
There you go.
But I was excited to see him, and then I was excited to see Mickey Moniak. He's somebody that the Angels had given a try for a couple of years. With the addition of Jorge Soler at the DH spot, Trout was planning on playing right field. It ended up kind of a logjam in the outfield, and it turned out that could have been Joe Adell or Mickey Moniak. I'm glad they stuck with Joe Adell because I've been waiting for him to have the season that he's having. You kind of saw him on the way to have that season last year, and for him to do what he's done, it's been amazing. And so to see Mickey Moniak having success with the Rockies, especially in Colorado, I've seen the splits, and he's definitely boosted by being in Colorado. So yeah, and then the way the cookie crumbles this season, we probably could have kept Mickey Moniak because, you know, Trout had to come out of the outfield. Solaire's been hurt most of the season. That's just the way things go. But it did open up a pathway for Bryce Teodosio in center field, and he's a lot of fun to watch too. But when I think about the Rockies, and, you know, you mentioned not being the worst team in history, I look at some of the guys on the White Sox this year, and I'm like, there's some dudes, and they're not far off. And so being able to watch the Rockies this weekend, I just got to say, as a fan from the outside looking in, it's really cool to see, like, okay, Rockies got some dudes that are on the come up. And yeah, maybe this year wasn't great. Maybe next year it'll take, you know, a little bit more. But you could be sitting on the other side of it with, you know, a payroll, you know, that's probably twice as much as the Rockies, like the Angels have. And, you know, at the end of the day, the record doesn't matter when you're not making the playoffs, right? And that's just kind of where both these teams are. And so it's exciting as a baseball fan. It's exciting to see some exciting guys on the Rockies for sure.
Yeah, and you know, it's just for the Rockies. It's how do we get these guys to that next level? You know, as you've seen, as in I would say the AL and the NL West, two of the better divisions in baseball, with the Rockies being the outlying team. And you know, the A's have really taken strides from a couple of years ago. They are not the team they were when, you know, the A's were the worst team, and then the White Sox took the mantle, and the Rockies have have been that one this year. But, you know, so there's a lot of young talent on there. I just worry about the Rockies' ability to turn some of these guys into studs. A lot of young guys. Rockies are tied with the Nationals for being the youngest team in baseball. There's a lot. It's just, we haven't seen a lot of that since Arenado and Story and some of these guys really be like game changers. There's good guys on the Rockies, have good players, but are they game changers? Now, Hunter Goodman could be the example. If this is the norm, you're getting that production from the catcher position, that you'll take that any day of the week. Absolutely. That's awesome. But I'd like to see Ezequiel Tovar was banged up this year, the Rockies shortstop. I'd like to see him take a step. And Brenton Doyle has kind of had a bit of a roller coaster after dealing with some really tough off the field stuff and a slump at the beginning of the season. I think that really factors. Baseball is a very mental game. And when you go through, you know, stuff outside the game, that really impacts you. So I'd like to see the Rockies be able to take these guys to the next level, because I think there's good talent, but there's not a lot of like, wow, like, whoa, like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes peeled. This guy. And then, you know, the Rockies fans the Rockies did sprinkle a little bit of hope when Ethan Holiday was taking BP there this weekend, and he hit a couple of balls to the third deck. So it was kind of, I think the Rockies are like, but I think that's a good way to segue into my question here. And this will bleed over into the segment number 3 here. How should Rockies fans and Angels fans feel? Because you nailed it on the head. The Rockies now avoid the worst history of all time moniker. They have all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's just the 7th straight losing season. It's the 100th. It's the 3rd straight 100 loss season. The Angels, of course, are facing another losing season, missing the playoffs. You know, XYZ. How are we supposed to go through another offseason here, as you know, being our podcasters, doing what we do to spin? And I'm kind of like, you know, put on your PR hat or whatever for the teams. How can you really spin this? The Rockies, I don't think, are going to be a team that's going to tear everything down and really set the tone that way. Yeah. I don't think that's going to be the case. And are the Angels really poised to do something like drastic, where they're like, you know, both these teams have albatross contracts that they're dealing with here. Right. Are they going to make decisions like that? Do you really think that the Angels are going to do something differently this offseason?
Yeah, that's our biggest fear, right? As Angel fans. And look, even you suggesting like, you know, the Rockies aren't going to tear it all down. The Angels have needed to tear it all down 10 years ago. You know what I mean? It was
right. Yeah. And the Rockies are the same way. You know, now with the streaks that they're on, it's just like when you don't make it's clear these are really deep-seated problems. Like these teams got problems that are deep-rooted and issues.
Right. And for both of us, it begins with ownership, of course. That's always a frustration, but we can't fire the owner, unfortunately. And that's kind of where Angel fans sit right now. I think the biggest thing that could happen this offseason, and I mentioned it in segment 1, is bringing in somebody like Tori Hunter. He's been rumored as a possible managerial candidate. He actually applied for it before Ron Washington was given it. Albert Pujols still has a great relationship with the team. He's taken the Dominican team to the playoffs and they won it all. So he's got some experience in that. Darren Erstad, who is a college coach historically, is also a name that's come up. And then I think jokingly, John Heyman even brought up, hey, bring back Sosha. Right. And I'm like, yeah. And a lot of fans would say, yeah, bring back Sosha. We want him back. But basically, Paul, I think I'm concerned about what this team will do in terms of roster. But I think if you can make a change in terms of the managerial style, the coaching staff, especially the hitting coach, has just been awful. The Angels are top 5 in home runs, but they're number 1 in strikeouts. And that's just emblematic of who this team has been all season long. And there's just not a lot of consistency with this team. They had a great first 2 weeks and they fell off for about a month, and then they're great for about a week, and they can sweep the Dodgers twice this year, and then they can get swept by the A's the very next series. Right. And so the continuity and consistency has been a problem. And, I know I'm sitting here saying, well, get a new manager, get a new coach, get rid of all the continuity. But the truth is I think they need that kind of shakeup. And I think kind of what you were saying about the Rockies, you got to get the best out of these guys. You need somebody who wants to get their hands in the clay and shape them into something, respectable. And the young guys, for their credit, have all taken a step forward. And so you just have to really hope that guys like Joe Adell can have another 30-plus homer season, almost 100 RBIs, right? They got one more year of Taylor Ward. You hope that he can duplicate what he's been able to do this season. So, yeah, in that vein, I'm not confident in what this offseason looks like because they've been doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I can't sit here and be like, well, you know what? This year is going to be different. I just don't feel like it's going to be the case.
Yeah, and I mean that's I have no real good thing to sell the Rockies fan this offseason.
Yeah.
You have to hope that this team looks itself in the mirror and makes changes. Like they can't continue to allow their pitching staff to be the worst in baseball.
Right.
The Rockies have a pitching coach that is very familiar with these guys that they've paid a lot of money to, and all of the Rockies veterans have really regressed this year. Now, injury is a big factor in that, but
Sure.
Kyle Freeland, Germán Marquez, and Antonio Senzatella were things I was very excited about going into this season. And if you've listened to Locked On Rockies, they're probably my biggest disappointment of the season. These are supposed to be the veteran guys. These guys got to the playoffs with the Rockies, and It was, in a big part because of their abilities on the mound. And so, yeah, I'm kind of in another spot where it's just like, I don't exactly know what the Rockies can do to really amp people up. But I'm curious here, John, before we go to the break here and wrap this thing up, I just want the simplified version of this answer. Does bringing in one of those guys for managers, do you like that as a choice for manager, or is that, hey, you love this name? Talk about two names that, it's like I get people say, bring in, Todd Helton, bring in Larry Walker, and these, and I'm like, listen, I love those names, but we're talking about effective managing here.
Correct.
Is that, where do you fall on that?
Yeah. I'll put it simply, Paul. The last guy who had Angels owner Artie Moreno's ear was Mike Scioscia, because he had his respect. Obviously, he got them and won the World Series before Artie Moreno arrived. I think Artie, he loves his glory days players. He loves when the Angels were winning, and Pujols was part of that. Tori was way more part of that. I think those are the only guys who can really bend Artie Moreno to the will of a good team and to the will of the fans to say, hey, you can't spend on the fringes. You got to go get an ace. Like, let's go get that ace. And if it is somebody who has some pull and some sway with Artie Moreno as manager, then yeah, I think it's going to have to be one of those names, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I think that's a good starting point, because our listeners and everydayers say it all the time. Nothing changes until Artie changes. And I think if you can get somebody like Hunter Pujols, you might start seeing some change with the ownership and how Artie Moreno runs this team.
All right, we're going to put a bow on this crossover here. Look ahead to the rest of the season for these and get a little jealous because baseball is kind of a lot more fun for everybody else right now. But we're going to put a bow on this series as well, but we got to take one more break. Don't go anywhere. Got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Nutrafol. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There's so many products out there, and it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people, and it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root cause of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. You're going to start noticing less shedding and healthier-looking hair after using Nutrafol, and you're going to feel good about it knowing that Nutrafol is an NSF-certified product and backed by a peer-reviewed study. These you can see thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code Locked On MLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code Locked On MLB. We're also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Locked On Rockies, Locked On Angels crossover here for you, wrapping up here in segment number 3. So the Rockies look to go take on the red hot Mariners up next in Seattle. We'll get to be watching the Rockies' little firsthand experience, which will be very fun. A team that's got good pitching against a team that can't hit, going up against there, and then they finish in San Francisco. What's up? What's next for the Angels here? As I'm assuming a final, they get to finish at home in front of the home fans here to end the season. I'm assuming
they do. They got 6 games left. They've got the Royals for 3, and then the Astros to finish out the year. And we'll see if they play spoiler, or at least help play spoiler for the Mariners. I have a feeling that Mariners fans are going to be the biggest Angel fans this week.
Yep, and they talk about an interesting matchup, and for them, kind of probably an interesting thing here. You get the Rockies with your opportunity. A sweep gives them and locks up the division for them, and then facing the Dodgers right after that. So it's kind of a nice little, big postseason matchup here. What's the one thing here, John? Just as we're running out of time, we'll do a little rapid fire here. Yeah. What's the one thing? Is it you just want to see a couple more Adele bombs? Is there something you want to see here over the last 6 games of the season? As unfortunately here this time next week will be probably as frustrating as this was. I actually will say I will be looking forward to a little bit of a break from watching some Rockies baseball as much as I love them. But is there anything you'd like to see the Angels do over their final 6 games that would just be a nice way to at least go in with a little bit of a head held high moment into the offseason?
Yeah, definitely. We got a little bit of that today, or I should say yesterday, with Caden Dana on the mound. He didn't win the game, but he looked good out there. He's one of our young starting pitchers who's got a bright future ahead of him, 21 years old, and I thought that was a good outing for him against the Rockies. Sam Aldeguerri is another young starter who's coming up to replace Jose Soriano, who was unfortunately hurt and put on the IL the rest of the season. And then Mitch Ferris, you saw him in this series as well. Just some young talent to watch and see how they do. Denzer Guzman has been a top prospect for the Angels for a long time. He's taken the place of Zach Neto while he's finishing out the season on the IL as well. So really it's just looking at the young guys and just seeing what they do. And then that way they can inspire all kinds of conversations in the offseason of that guy. Should we go with that guy? Should we go get somebody? And so depending on how those young guys end their seasons, I just want to see them, have quality outings as a starter. I want to see Guzman do his thing at shortstop, and let's have a little fun on the way out, huh?
Yep. For the Rockies, it's just about everybody's auditioning for something. Even the vets, Kyle Farmer, Orlando Arcia, if they're getting bats, it's all about, hey, what is that going to look like? What's next year looking like for them? Every single person in the Rockies. I mean, Herman Marquez just did his last for Locked On Rockies fans. Well, with the off day, that'll give us an opportunity. We'll dive into what possibly was a big moment for Rockies fans, potentially saying goodbye to, pretty strong resume of the greatest Rockies pitcher. Depends on how you look at it there. There's, of course, some theirs, but statistic-wise, he is at least top 3 across the board there. But yeah, so for the Rockies fan out there, I think it's just, it's your 6 more games. Right. What's your final audition? What's it look like? Do the same type of thing, like you said, John. Hey, let's give this guy a shot. But the Rockies also can't overcommit as well. We talked a little Mickey Moniak. Just because he had the good season, right? Let's not go overboard here. Right. Let's, if it's going to be an extension, let's make it a reasonable one there as well.
Indeed.
So we'll be seeing it all, and we'll be talking Rockies and Angels baseball throughout the remainder of the season, throughout the postseason, and throughout the offseason, because that's what we do. Talk about Rockies and Angels baseball every Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On MLB Podcast Network. You can find us on Locked On Rockies. Best place to interact with the shows on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, so you should head on over there. John, where can folks go to stay up to date with all things Super Halo Bros and Locked On Angels? And I do have to say, you got a lot of Mario memorabilia.
That's
Mario
right.
Baseball fan? Are we a Mario baseball fan?
You know what? Unfortunately, I never got to play it. I never got a copy, so I gotta work on that.
Okay, we'll have to get you set up for the. This is our first time chatting. I'm very involved, and I organize.
I've seen it
Mario
online. Yeah,
things. So, but anyway, where can folks go to stay up to date with all things Locked On Angels and all the cool stuff that you guys do?
Yeah, at Locked On Angels on Twitter, at Super Halo Rose on Twitter and Instagram. Of course, like Paul said, come on over to the Angels YouTube channel, Locked On Angels YouTube channel. Get in the comments section because we love dialoguing with you there. Hit that like and subscribe button. That really helps us out as well.
Absolutely. And folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On MLB Podcast Network.